Hallucinogenic drugs, hypnosis, electric shocks to the brain, some of the methods used in secret CIA mind control experiments on Canadian citizens during the Cold War. Now, 6 decades later, some justice. CBC News has learned that the federal government has quietly paid settlements in a number of cases where patients were used as human guinea pigs, including one woman who never recovered. Evan Dyer has more on this dark chapter.
As the Korean War ended, the CIA saw a troubling pattern, returning prisoners of war critical of the American way of life.
Now you just sit there quietly and cooperate.
Movies like The Manchurian Candidate stoked fears of a new communist weapon, brainwashing. The CIA wanted to understand more about brainwashing. It had money and it was ready to fund experiments. And that's what led it here to the Allen Memorial Institute, then one of the most prestigious psychiatric hospitals in Canada, and its director, Dr. Ewan Cameron.
These are the days and hours are the occasion.
Cameron's patients, many of them women with postpartum depression, became guinea pigs in an experiment called depatterning, breaking down the mind with repeated electric shocks and drugs, including massive doses of LSD.
He took my mother away from me.
Alison Steele was 4 when her mother Jean fell into a depression.
And we have pictures of her skiing, horseback riding, always a smile, happy, a person that I didn't know. I never saw my mother this way.
60 years after her mother's treatment, Alison Steele finally has her medical records.
This is where I got to know my mother. What happened to her, the horror that she went through. Pacing the hall this morning saying, I'm just a prisoner. I feel like Jesus on the cross, can feel the nails in my hands and feet. It's just like being buried alive. Somebody, please do something.
Jean Steele was kept in a drug-induced coma for weeks, her brain repeatedly shocked. Dr. Cameron broke her down, but wasn't able to put her back together.
So I just learned over time to not talk to her because I knew she couldn't. So that made me angry.
In the 90s, the Government of Canada, which also funded Cameron's experiments, compensated several dozen patients, but only those who had been completely depatterned, reduced to incontinence, unable to tie shoelaces. Jean Steele wasn't damaged enough, so she and hundreds more received nothing.
These experiments were done without the informed consent of the patients.
Lawyer Alan Stein took up some of the rejected cases. The government's paid a number of settlements since, including $100,000 for Alison Steele. Many of the payments come with non-disclosure agreements.
They're trying to do it quietly.
It's not fair. I mean, I feel blessed that I was able to get this far for my parents. I really do. That's what gives me justice. I'm just grateful to be able to do it, and I hope I just hope that you can hear me up there, because it might bring you peace. It might bring you both peace.
All right, so just how far has the Central Intelligence Agency gone in its attempt to understand and create new mind control technology? New details are coming out in a trove of declassified documents that the agency has kept secret for years. RT's Rachel Blevins has more.
A new series of documents have been released that appear to give insight into the CIA's gruesome and disturbing mind control experiments. The latest release is comprised of 800 pages that include diagrams, diary logs, and letters detailing the results of experiments conducted as part of Project MKUltra. The documents reveal that dogs were the subject of some experiments seeking to establish mind control technology in the 1960s. In a program that was deemed successful, a number of devices were tested on the dogs with the goal of controlling their movements, using implants and electrical stimulation of the brain. The documents were published online by the Black Vault, which describes itself as the largest online Freedom of Information Act document clearinghouse in the world. They reveal that mind control techniques using drugs were also used on prison inmates at the time, with agents using experimental drugs on prisoners who had been hospitalized. The drugs were administered forcefully and without consent from the subjects, with the goal to reduce inhibition to revealing self-incriminating information during interrogations while the inmates were awaiting trial. The documents also detailed the CIA's interrogation practices. Forms of physical, psychological, and mechanical torture included everything from threats to drugs that cause pain to truth serums that were forcibly used on subjects. Now, the CIA also sought out hypnotic speaking techniques to control large audiences. And the hundreds of documents give insight into the agency's attempts to control the minds of both humans and dogs. Now, while it isn't clear if the CIA is still using the same mind control techniques today, these documents do give insight into a world that was hidden from the public for more than 60 years. In Washington, Rachel Blevins, RT.